It is a great privilege to introduce our next speaker, whose persistence ensured this memorial took its place on the National Mall 20 years ago. Her commitment to this memorial and the greatest generation is unparalleled. The longest-serving woman in congressional history, Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur. In 2014, Ambassador Williams called Congresswoman Kaptur the mother of the World War II Memorial for her critical role in moving legislation through Congress and her devotion to World War II veterans. Congresswoman Kaptur continues to support the memorial, recently leading efforts for the United States Mint's 2024 Greatest Generation Commemorative Coin Program to help fund memorials, maintenance, and educational programs. It is my great honor to introduce the mother of the World War II Memorial, Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur.
Good morning. As I was listening to the beautiful music, I was reminded of what one of my constituents, whose name was John Szymanski, used to look out over a crowd like this and say, "You look just beautiful." And you do. Dear Americans and guests, respectfully, on this Memorial Day of 2024, we gather here in our nation's capital at our National World War II Memorial, centered along America's Mall of Democracy. Today, 235 years after the founding of our young republic, we honor the memory of all Americans who are war dead, including unknown soldiers who rendered their dear lives in military service to liberty. Our republic's sacred historical journey of liberty, justice, and equality for all rests on their strong shoulders of over 1,100,000 of our forebears in arms. They were our loved ones, our grandparents, our parents, our uncles, aunts, neighbors, friends. They lodge deeply in our minds and our hearts forever. Soldiers, sailors, airmen, Space Force, Marines, Guard and Reserves, Coast Guard and Merchant Marine, we must honor their memory and meaning as we are today. Thank you all for coming. We recognize those who fought in the Revolutionary War, the War of 1812, the Mexican-American War, the Civil War, the Spanish-American War, World War I, World War II, the Korean conflict, the Vietnam War, the Persian Gulf War, the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, and here today, America remembers Pearl Harbor, the May 8th Victory Europe, the September 2nd Victory Pacific, Guadalcanal, Midway, Anzio, D-Day, Omaha Beach, Saipan, Battle of the Bulge, and Iwo Jima, to name a few. Today, America bows to these heroes and heroines. They did not seek a Memorial Day. Originally known as Decoration Day, following the Civil War, it was widely observed starting on May 30th, 1868. In 1968, Memorial Day was authorized by Congress to designate the last Monday in May as the day of tribute and remembrance of those who died while serving in our armed forces. Today at this place, we recall a more recent chapter of America's solemn history. The World War II Memorial was built to honor the human sacrifice that defines the 20th century's profound achievement, the victory of liberty over tyranny. After imperialist Japan bombed Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, the United States declared war on Japan and its allies, Germany and Italy. In the immortal words of the great American general George Marshall, quote, "Before the sun sets, our flag will be recognized throughout the world as a symbol of freedom and of overwhelming force." More than 400,000 service members died in service to liberty halfway around the world on 3 fronts: Europe, the Pacific, North Africa. And over the past 2 decades, more than 80 million visitors have traveled to pay homage at this memorial to them. The visitors make the journey to honor the extraordinary valor and historic achievements by our forebears who bequeathed liberty to us. This gathering place is designed as a vista for reflection between the Washington Monument to the east that honors our nation's founding and General George Washington, our nation's first president. To our west rests the Lincoln Memorial, at whose spectacular plaza honors President Abraham Lincoln. During the 19th century, his heroic, life-giving leadership preserved the American Union following our nation's bitter Civil War. Upwards of 700,000 soldiers and civilians died, along with unknown numbers of civilians on our own territory. The United States of America was victorious, but the price paid in battle of brother against brother, state against state, made the Civil War the costliest war in lives lost of any of America's wars. America will not go back. The sacrificial patriots honored here are the awful price of taming the 20th century's vicious beasts of human annihilation. President Eisenhower described the fighting as savagery. Our valorous heroes who survived the wars against Nazism in Europe and North Africa, the Holocaust, and imperialism in the Pacific, then returned home. Recently, as I witnessed the address of Japan's Prime Minister, Fumio Kishida, before the assembled Congress of the United States this year, my memory recalled the 79 years of history, extraordinary, that made that moment and what had been required. America had built and rebuilt a war-torn world, and though it was not until President Truman integrated the U.S. military post-World War in 1948 that America proclaimed, as did Lincoln, that liberty has no color. History records how African American foot soldiers and Tuskegee airmen fought hand in hand with enlistees not of color, but veterans all returned home, built their families and communities. They intentionally created global institutions to promote dialogue and understanding, as well as to defend our free world. They did not assume these tasks willingly, but of necessity. They did not shirk their responsibility to the future. They aspired to a higher purpose, to tame the demons of war. The World War II Memorial is not named for a person, but for the 20th century's greatest generation. Here at this memorial, 4,006 gold stars on the Wall of Heroes represent those 400,600 fallen Americans who offered their precious lives to liberty. Learning from the grit of World War II, America's team who built this memorial never gave up. Former chairman, as has been mentioned, of the Battle Monuments Commission, Ambassador Hayden Williams, never gave up. He would write of these patriots, and I quote, "If their silent stare could speak, Archibald MacLeish would have them say, 'We leave you our deaths. Give them meaning.'" Those that survived did just that. They forged new alliances like NATO to defend our free world, and they shaped a world in which the United States entered its longest period in history of relative peace between great powers. That architecture is being tested this very day. The World War II generation triumphed over adversity. It vanquished the hateful cruelty exacted by the axes of Nazi imperialists and ultimately hateful cruelty in 1989 and 1991 with Soviet dictators who savagely had killed and starved millions upon millions upon millions more innocent human beings than ever before on Earth. This coming June 6th, our nation will commemorate the 80th anniversary of the D-Day landing of 1944, the turning point in World War II. History notes, it was the largest military and naval operation ever conducted by any armed force in the history of the world. 400,000 U.S. combat troops were led by brilliant U.S. Army General Omar Bradley. U.S. troops and 2,000 paratroopers joined with Britain and Canadian allies in a total force numbering 1,200,000 in Operation Overlord. In a surprise attack that enormous force traversed the English Channel beginning on D-Day 1 June 6, 1944. Their mission was to defeat the deadly forces of Nazi tyranny that had invaded France and other European nations that had joined. What transpired was the most harrowing, costliest battle in world history. Enemy planes bombed our valiant seaborne troops as Nazi platoons hidden in bunker nests arrayed across the high bluffs above the French coast shot down as Allied troops in column after column after column scaled up the treacherous cliffs. The English Channel turned red with the precious blood of our fallen. Our own uncle, Stanley Rogowski, from Toledo, Ohio, was one of them. Forced to crawl over layers of corpses of his dead comrades as he and his Army engineer buddies hauled heavy steel track up the embankment under heavy fire. Their valor allowed tons and tons of equipment to be hauled on that track, tanks and ammunition, and ultimately the Allies kept persevering forward. Over the next 2 months would come the terrible Battle of St. Lo. There, America's soldiers, under command of Army General George Patton, would break the back of Nazi invaders as fierce fighting in the treacherous French hedgerows resulted in terrible losses. The Allies, U.S., British, and Canadian, would slowly gain ground month after agonizing month of fighting. They continued to aim at the heart of the strategic edge of Nazi resistance in Germany itself. Still fighting a year later on March 7, 1945, it would be an exceptional soldier from Holland, Ohio, Sergeant Alexander Drabik, who would lead the consequential spearhead charge for American forces with the 27th Armed Infantry Brigade of the 9th Armored Division. Under intense enemy fire, they dashed eastward across the Ludendorff Bridge over the Rhine River near Remagen toward the heart of Nazi Germany. Polish conscripts had cut the fuses that the Nazis had planned to blow up the bridge. It was the last bridge that the Nazis had not blown up to prevent Allies from crossing into the heart of German territory. Sergeant Drabik's bravery allowed troops to cross over within an hour. The 1st Allied Brigade across the Rhine River, led by Sergeant Drabik under the command of General John Leonard, also of Toledo, Ohio, would go on to be awarded the Distinguished Service Cross for his extraordinary heroism. And that moment has been deemed the turning point for World War II on the continent of Europe. They not only won the war, but having faced the abyss of human annihilation, they went on to build the institutions for the architecture of a free world. In 1987, almost a half century after Allied victory in World War II, it was a U.S. Army veteran who had served at St. Lo, France, in Tank Command, who first approached his Congresswoman. His name was Roger Durbin of Berkey, Ohio, located in Lucas County's 9th Congressional District, and inquired of her in an open forum like this, why was there no World War II memorial in Washington, D.C., to which he could bring his grandchildren? That question inspired our 17-year-long shared quest to build this memorial. May I recognize one of Roger Durbin's grandchildren joining us here today, Melissa Durbin Suji and her husband, Dr. Yoon Suji, from Berkey, Ohio. Thank you for coming. With 24 public hearings heard over 17 years, legislation to build this memorial was first introduced in the U.S. House in 1987 until the memorial was officially dedicated in 2004. The effort spanned the terms of 3 presidents and 8 Congresses. As one sage named Congressman Barney Frank of Massachusetts quipped, "It took longer to construct the memorial than to conduct the war." The extraordinary and generous effort to raise private funds to help construct this memorial was led by Frederick W. Smith, CEO of Federal Express. We were all blessed by the fervent support of then-retired U.S. Senator and wounded World War II hero, Senator Robert Dole. He dedicated his last years to greeting veterans here almost every day on site and doing everything within his power to help the memorial reach its full potential. It was heartrending to watch him greet his comrades here one by one. For many, and indeed for him, it would be their last call. Additionally, Senator John Glenn of Ohio, Senator Strom Thurmond of South Carolina, Congressman William Clay of Missouri, Congressman Sonny Montgomery of Mississippi, Congressman Jack Davis of Illinois were essential. And I extend my gratitude and the gratitude of a nation for their patriotism and bipartisan support to accomplish something great for America. And let me shout out a huge thank you to Holly Rotundi, the persevering executive director of the Friends of the National World War II Memorial. Where's Holly? Here she is. Yay, Holly! Your entire Friends board, led by Jane Dropa, worked tirelessly to support this memorial and to advance its historical interpretation, and it has touched the hearts and lives of tens of millions of our fellow citizens. You have spread the wings of liberty for countless people to witness, and your unique and ever-growing educational program is bringing more interpretation and historical remembrance to our nation and world, including the lesson of patriotic self-giving that encapsulates the World War II generation. When our efforts began, we could not have imagined the citizen-driven initiative that has selflessly helped over 200,000 veterans visit this memorial, the Honor Flight program. Honor Flight was co-founded by Ohioan Earl Morse, a physician assistant and retired Air Force captain, and Jeff Miller, a small business owner and son of a World War II veteran. Morse worked in a Department of Veterans Affairs clinic in Springfield, Ohio, and there he saw many patients who were World War II veterans. After the National World War II Memorial in Washington was completed in 2004, he asked many of his veteran patients if they were going to see it, and most said, "Oh, yes." Morse said, "I would see my World War II veterans maybe 3-6 months later, and I'd ask them if they'd gone to see it. 300 of them I'd seen, and not a one had come to see the memorial." Reality set in. They were never going. So Mr. Morse then offered to personally fly the first 2 veterans to Washington to see the memorial. After seeing them break down and cry, upon visiting, he pitched his idea to a club of 300 private pilots at a local Air Force base, proposing that the pilots would pay for the flights for the veterans to Washington and personally escort them around the city. 11 volunteered, and history was made as that network was formed. Fast forward 20 years, I'm proud to say that the Honor Flight program is a resounding success. It has now allowed veterans of any war to witness at no cost the national memorials marking their historic deeds. And I recently welcomed back an honor flight from our region of the Midwest led by a 102-year-old wheelchair-bound World War II veteran nurse named Jerry DeMeo. I was overjoyed to hear her response as they took her wheelchair off the plane and moved her into the room, and the crowds were cheering, and I had the opportunity to ask her, "Jerry, what did you think of the memorial?" Absolutely beautiful. Beautiful. And she just beamed. She just beamed. Most recently, it has been the highest honor and privilege to introduce and gain passage of our new bipartisan legislation, H.R. 1057, the National World War II Memorial Commemorative Coin Act. This legislation has authorized the minting of 3 new coins at the U.S. Treasury in commemoration of today. the 20th anniversary of the National World War II Memorial here in Washington. These coins will serve as an important token of the spirit, sacrifice, and commitment of the brave Americans who fought for the triumph of liberty. The 3 distinct coins are now on sale through the U.S. Mint for the duration of this year. The net proceeds generated from the sale of these coins will ensure the memorial is properly maintained for years to come. My hope is that improvements will include expanded educational and historical materials in collaboration with the American Battle Monuments Commission and the World War II Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress many years ago, championed by Congressman Ron Kind of Wisconsin, now retired. Additionally, with the advance of the Internet, I'm challenging each of you to share the information about the coins and think about friends you know. Let them know the coins are on sale. With what we have now with new social media apps, teaching opportunities, and commemorative programming for the millions of people who visit each year and others throughout our country who cannot come, can really be advanced through the new electronic capabilities and embrace people across the country. Let me just say, while the greatest generation saved the world from Nazi and imperial domination and achieved the collapse of Soviet tyranny, beginning with Poland in 1989 and then all of Central Europe in 1991, specters of the 20th century remain. Historian and author of Bloodlands, Timothy Snyder, urges us, it is now up to us to preserve everything that the greatest generation fought and died for. In my own judgment, eternal vigilance demands attention to strengthen our NATO alliance and allowing Ukraine to accede to the constellation of free nations of Europe. Meeting global strategic imperatives requires requisite weapon systems, naval, satellite, and air supremacy being tested every day by those who would do us harm. Liberty requires accelerating our nation's quest for energy independence in perpetuity. Ladies and gentlemen, let us remember the words of Franklin D. Roosevelt, who spoke on February 12, 1943. We have faith, that future generations will know here, in the middle of the 20th century, there came a time when men of goodwill found a way to unite and produce and fight to destroy the forces of ignorance and intolerance and slavery and war. May God bless those we honor here and their families. May blessings flow to those serving in posts at home and overseas. May everyone gathered here today draw strength from the words and works of the heroes and heroines of the greatest generation. And may God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
The Friends of the National World War II Memorial annually presents the Brigadier General Charles E. McGee UNITY Award to individuals or groups that exemplify the spirit of unity and shared values prevalent during World War II. Named after Brigadier General Charles McGee, an original Tuskegee Airman, this award honors those who actively work for community betterment and embody the moral integrity of General McGee and the greatest generation. We're proud to present the 4th annual Brigadier General Charles E. McGee UNITY Award to Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur. Representing Ohio's 9th District since 1983, Congresswoman Kaptur has dedicated her career to promoting unity and cooperation, focusing on economic development, veterans affairs, and environmental conservation. 1987, Congresswoman Kaptur recognized the need for a national tribute to World War II veterans and introduced legislation to create a memorial. Her persistent advocacy led to the passage of the World War II Memorial Act in 1993. Dedicated in 2004, the memorial has since welcomed 100 million visitors. Congresswoman Kaptur continues to teach the lessons of the war and promote values of unity and cooperation. Her legislative and community efforts foster bipartisan cooperation, emphasizing common ground in governance. Here to present Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur with the Brigadier General Charles E. McGee UNITY Award is Yvonne McGee, daughter of the late General McGee.
I just want to say it's an honor to be here to represent my father, and he would be here to represent, as this award is, all the men and women of that generation. He used to love to talk with young people. He always gave them his 4 Ps. I think you exemplify all those, which is perceive, prepare, perform, and persevere, which I know you had to do to get this to happen. So it's our honor, and thank you to Holly and everyone from the World War II Memorial. Thank you.
Congratulations, Congresswoman Kaptur.